Tree Commission meeting for August 1st, 2017. It's 7 p.m. Calling to order. Second item on our agenda is a roll call. So Scott McCoy, Debbie Rainey.
Do I need to say present? Slaughter.
Slaughter. And then absent, Jane. Mike Berkeley is also, he had let me know earlier today he had some travel arrangements that got delayed, so he's not going to be in the day's meeting. And then we've got one open board seat that remains to be filled, but we do have a quorum. The approval of the agenda is item 3.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote. Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes, this is item number 4. We've got a couple of different minutes packages. One is from Tuesday in March, March 7th, and the other is from April 4th. They go back a couple of meetings back because we did not have a meeting this past July due to holiday scheduling, and we didn't have a quorum on a prior meeting or prior 2 meetings. So these are the last minutes that have not been approved.
A motion to approve.
Please.
Motion made.
And second. Yeah, I can second. Vote. Aye.
Aye.
We're now in section 5, which is old business. Some of these items that we're going to go over on here, I wasn't 100% certain whether I pulled them from a prior agenda. I didn't want to leave anything undiscussed if there were still business and discussion on it. So we may see some things on here that all we really need to do is recognize that they're completed. But 5.1 is an update on the roadscapes project on Highway 100 and Highway 96 junction in Fairview and associated dedication.
When was the final walkthrough? Was the April?
Came forward from April. And we really need,
Mike Berkeley here?
I think so, somebody who was actually there and involved with it to provide that update.
Well, I think that what we really need to pay attention to here is the warranty will last for 1 year from the final walkthrough. So all those things that are dead and in a mess, we still have a year. I think.
Brandon?
Have all been dropped, and who's gonna be, and will we ever get LS?
Brandon, why don't you come to the table and just.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Berkeley didn't have very much confidence in, from what he had recently heard about Lowe's not working for TDOT anymore, about having the ability to hold them accountable to that. And so Mr. Crutcher was here and he was speaking specifically, do we need to get a copy of the contract? Do we need to see exactly what is the language for us to be able to take action? But somebody did do something recently, so I'm not sure if maybe they did finally get something, but that was just our last update. Mr. Hall did call me yesterday and say he was going to be unable to make it tonight.
So Brandon, if Los and Associates, even though the contract and the bid and the grant said they were doing the work, that means they can't finish it because they're not working for the state? And what about LSI being held accountable for their part?
So that's where the question was, is Lawson Associates pretty much took the road of, we can't hardly even discuss it now because we no longer have the contract work with TDOT. And Lawson Associates was kind of our go-to to hold LSI accountable. So now are we going to be able to hold LSI accountable? I think that's where it digs into what exactly does our contract say to be able to push on them.
So does anyone have a copy of the grant?
I don't think so. Mr. Hall wasn't here that meeting or that night either. Mr. Berkeley was into it, and then Mr. Crutcher was talking about it that night. But Mr. Berkeley did not sound hopeful of the status of where that was. And so what has already been a disappointing process is even continuing.
I'm always very hopeful if there's a grant and a contract with the state.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I hope so.
That's somewhat, yeah, someone's gonna fix something.
But just for reference, I want to bring that up.
Thank you, Brandon. Mr. Chairman, could I suggest that we get a copy of the grant, the contract, and we have Mr. Hall to give us a report of what he knows? And then we can send that recommendation up to the board?
Yep, that sounds good, and we'll just add that to the next agenda.
And may possibly do that before the next meeting? I mean, if we can get a report and possibly talk to the city manager.
Yeah, and I guess my fear is that this is going to end up being more complex than what can adequately be described in a report. It's almost going to be, I think, quality discussion is going to have to be something that's interactive. So we can, I can ask for a report, the latest status update, everything that we know or have our hands on as far as paperwork. And then if needed, you know, I think maybe, I don't know, I guess it's a question back. The tree board might be able to meet, have a special meeting for that, you think? If this is a time-sensitive issue and we need to get that done and not wait a month, I'm open to that as well. But I can start with a query to Mr. Hall or
Well,
whatever.
I think that possibly if we only have a year and every month that rolls by and we're out of planting season again, and then we get into that it's going to be that same rabbit hole that we've been in for 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it seems like we've been involved in that forever. And, you know, my experience with dealing with grants with the state, that if there's a grant and there's a contract, that you may have to make a few phone calls, but someone eventually is going to be responsible for it. We just have to make sure that we're making the phone calls.
Well, I'll send that request for information out tomorrow, and then maybe we'll hopefully get something back that'll help us decide if we need to have further discussion and try to get a meeting in front of the regular meeting. More discussion on that item? What about the associated dedication? Was there a question?
The dedication was done in earlier, like February. So that was done.
So there's that doesn't need to be on the topic line.
I think the only thing about the dedication was the sign that we had, there was a sign that we had drawn up that had been a drawing for and approved, and so what's there is not what was approved. Mr. Butler, is that? And I think that was given to Mr. Hall probably in February, maybe? Oh, no, it was before the dedication, so probably December of last year.
Mr. Berkeley.
Okay.
So to be clear, the signage is completed?
No,
No, so it should remain on here?
yes, because there was a sign that was designed, and Lowe's was gonna come back with an estimate for the sign. So, yes, so that's, we need to make sure that gets done.
Should that be, should it be two topics or one topic?
One,
One, okay. All right, anything else on that item? The next item, 5.2, it's an update, discussion surrounding the 3-year maintenance bond, requiring, the possibility of requiring a 3-year maintenance bond on tree and shrub survival on commercial developments. We had some conversations in the past, I think just trying to understand how maybe other municipalities, other cities did it. And the concern we were trying to address would be that if you had a development or a restaurant come in and they met the requirements, planted the proper plants, but then something went wrong with their landscaping and they died, what happens next? How do you handle that if it's a year down the road? And so that's how this discussion actually got put on here. The status of that, you know, what we can and can't do and how we approach handling that going forward, I think is the discussion to work out.
I think that the original wording in the ordinance was that your landscaping should always live. But for the first 3 years, there was a bond, but you had to maintain your landscaping to the original landscape plan. And if you wanted to change your landscaping, you had to bring that plan back in before the tree commission to be approved. And it would still have to meet all the standard requirements, have all the trees and the shrubs are on the list, approved list. So I think that was one of those things that we never did get officially moved into the design manual. And
City manager had some, or something like that.
but I think that what is enforceable, that your landscaping has to be maintained as long as, forever. You don't get to let it die after a year or 2 years or 3 years and not be citations issued for that landscape plan. So I think that's something that needs to go back to the planning commission to be put in the design review manual. Quietly.
No, that's good information.
One thing I might keep a compiled list.
And I think that one should go on, that you're responsible for your landscaping. As long as the business is here, you have to maintain your landscaping. And if it needs to be redone at some point, if you want a whole new design, it has to come back.
And just so I understand, this is something that's different than the idea of a 3-year bond. This lets whatever bonding is in place currently to actually build the place stands as is, but it's clarifying our general codes that, you know, if the stuff dies 2 years from now, there's somebody just in an apartment that will say, hey, you've got to address that, or you'll get some additional fees. We don't deal with the bond until it's addressed, and to understand how to address it, the tree board can approve if you need to make a change.
And then I think Mike Berkeley, the city arborist, is responsible for checking to make sure that everything is good.
So the action item on that would be for us to, on the next agenda, have a line to, I guess, craft or compile a list of requests that we would like to see included in that design review manual, one of which is these, but there might be other ideas. Okay. Any other discussion on 5.2? Next section, next item, 5.3, Hardee's Landscaping Updates. And I know I've got an update from Brandon that he said it was his understanding that he believes that the Hardee's items had been completed and repaired. I don't.
You might as well come up here and say it so you can use the microphone. Just come sit among us. Yes, you can be the guest speaker.
This is perfect. Sorry. Thank you. I'll come up here. Okay. Thank you. But Mr. Berkeley gave us a quick breakdown when we didn't have a quorum at one of the last meetings and said that he had been to Hardee's and that they had replaced per his approval. He's on the right side.
And with that status, then that item we no longer need to touch that item unless it comes up again. 5.4, got a note on hold due to hold on funds supporting the roadscapes project. I'm not certain what that item was.
I believe that item was the money we'd appropriated months ago to do the Welcome to Fairview and the parks and hire a landscape architect and come up with some plans for the parks. Isn't that right, Mr. Butler?
Correct, yes, ma'am. So that document I gave you tonight is the proposal from Lowson Associates for landscape plan around City Hall, Veterans Park overall plan to become a Veterans Park, and then also Heritage Park, which is the Triangle School or History Village over on 100. So he had three proposals. When we discussed in the park board, we said maybe City Hall landscape plan could be put on hold right now because there were some other things happening here that maybe it would coincide with. It wouldn't be a big rush on that one. But they were anxious to try and get that Veterans Park discussion up, and then also the landscape plans for over there on 100 at Memorial or at Triangle Park, all the names. But as we discussed prior to this meeting, I think it'd be good to bring up, I'll bring it to the park board next week and kind of run it through them and then get it on the board's agenda to discuss the possibility of incorporating Veterans Park over into the History Village area over there to try and maybe have a dedicated area or a flagpole or something like that to start to incorporate over there. And that's one thing we talked about at the park board was, let's not just get three plans because these are just proposals for plans and then not do anything. And so it'd be nice if we could say, let's pick this one and really go at it and finish it and then dig at the other ones. And so if that is something we could do where you could put all our eggs over towards the Triangle School and make it better and nicer rather than individual have little things everywhere.
I kind of like that. And so now, since I think we're kind of referring to the park as the Bowie Park system, could we get the Friends of Bowie also involved with kind of working on that too?
Absolutely. Richard Edmondson's on the park board as a member of the Friends, and so he'll be at the park board as well to discuss there.
And I think that, if Lowson Associates is willing to work with both the Friends and the board and come up with a plan, and this is what the vision could be, and the pavers, all of that.
That's what Los's plan was, to have he had a fancy word for it. Let's see if I can find it in here.
Would it be one way to understand what it means?
He called it a charrette, which would be a gathering to take ideas and to incorporate into his plan. And so we could have a charrette for the Triangle History Village and invite the Friends, invite the park board, invite the tree board and citizens, and just have kind of an open idea discussion of what we'd like to envision over there.
This particular item then, understanding all that, how it's described now is inadequate for my brain. So I'm hoping for better verbiage for 5.4. It says on hold due to hold on funds supporting roadscapes project. What's a better sentence to describe what this?
Well, we had it on hold because there was still money dedicated to roadscapes, so we couldn't spend any money until we were sure we had that done. According to what I've been told by our CFO, I believe that the roadscapes has officially been, there is no outstanding the only expenditures of the last year have been the roadscapes grant. We have received reimbursements of 80% of the expenditure in full. To my knowledge, there are no outstanding revenue or expenditure items. The balance in the tree bank account, 6/30, is $101,030.79. So, you know, I say that roadscapes has pretty much been done. There may be something we have to do, but it wouldn't be, I wouldn't think very much, because I would think LSI is gonna have to stand behind that.
Unfortunately, I think it's my understanding that we are paid in full on the roadscapes project, which isn't what you would hope, but, and then there's a recent payment from the medical center.
That's included in this
number.
101,000.
Right.
Yeah. So all of that, I think, is in here.
So in short, we said all these items are gonna be on hold because we're gonna spend so much on the roadscapes project. Once we get reimbursed from the grant, we'll be able to go back to these activities to use some of the money from the tree bank fund.
So if we have 6,400 set aside for Triangle, and we had 5,450 set aside for veterans, would it be possible to say that we recommend spending up to $10,000 for a plan
Triangle.
and maybe even have the beginnings of?
Absolutely, and that's what one thing we wanted, Park Board got this presented to them, wanted to bring it to the tree board, since it is the tree bank funds, just for open discussion. And then our plan after bringing it to here was to bring it to the board, just to, even, because this money was approved so long ago, we wanted to make sure it was still okay. And so the board will also have an opportunity to discuss where they think allocating it would be best.
I think that the recommendation for expenditures from the tree bank fund will have to come from the tree commission up to the board.
So I think that 15 grand was the number at one point, and the board had approved it, is what the mayor recollection was. And so this is trying to stay under that 15 number is where it's coming from.
Let's make sure there's minutes in the BOC where they've approved it. It would not hurt to approve it again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we wanted to bring it back to you guys for reapproval and rediscussion to ensure that it was still the best option, that money was still there.
So does that answer your question? I'm sorry. So we could not actually spend any of this money until we knew we were through with roadscapes.
But now we can take the on hold off and say,
Yeah, we're ready to go.
items open for discussion for the Triangle School and Veterans Park.
Yes, it answered the question, and I guess I understand the on-hold part, but it just, we don't have it, there's no topic. It just says, this is on hold due to funds being locked up by the roadscapes project. So it's like there's a sentence missing.
It's a space filler. It keeps it on there so we don't forget it.
Yeah, that was on hold due to hold on funds supporting the roadscape project. So these were things that were on hold until we could get the roadscapes project done and cleared. And yeah, so Jane just kept these things as buttons until we could get through with them.
So what would be, if I were to write this on an agenda and it wasn't on hold, what I would have would be a combination of these three items: the Veterans Park dollar amount, City Hall dollar amount.
Yeah, I think approving money to,
For those three specific.
well, I think since we've got City Hall on hold, I think we could probably combine the money set aside for Veterans Park and the money set aside for Heritage Park, combine those two and hire Lowe's and Associates to develop a plan to combine the two. Just my thinking.
And Lowe's and Associates, are they the ones that are managing the roadscapes piece that now can't talk to us, or?
Yeah, they
So
designed.
that's troubling to me.
Well, they don't work for the state anymore. See, that was state pass-through funds.
TDOT hired them through that project. They designed the project and then oversaw it at our begging mercy, because at first they weren't the manager of the project. At first they said, "No, we just designed it. We're not here for enforcement." Some bumpy pass in the beginning. They did just step in and said, "We are here to help for enforcement." And now, since they're not connected with TDOT anymore, they say they can no longer be a part of it.
It's basically been a nightmare from the get-go.
But the contract is Fairview, LSI,
And so, Debbie, are you wanting to make a motion that they're, to recommend that money be allocated or approved for expenditure, and then that would need to go to the BOC for
Approval.
actual approval. We're just making a recommendation to them.
So, yes, I'll make a motion that that we approve spending of up to $10,000 to hire a landscape architect, design a plan for Heritage Park that will incorporate the Veterans Memorial, everything into that Triangle School Park. Is that all that needs to be in the motion, Brandon?
That's good. It might be beneficial to try and have a tree board, park board, joint meeting at some point, because it's kind of like two boards are both trying to push one thing forward, so everybody has ideas for these. Since it's tree bank funds, it gets drug into here. Since it's park, it gets drug into
Well,
park
then,
board. So
why don't we send the recommendation up that much money be spent, and then we'll set a workshop for the
charrette,
park board. I'm sorry, what?
a charrette, as they call it.
Oh, yeah, that. So, like, we'll all know what that is. So why don't we approve, I make a motion that we approve that money being spent, and that then, after that is approved by the Board of Commissioners, that we set a workshop for Los and Associates, for the park board, and for the tree board, and for anyone else who has ideas to come to an open meeting and discuss what they would like to see in that park.
Perfect.
So I'll second your motion, which would be to forward that recommendation to the BOC. As far as the scheduling of this joint workshop, what are the mechanics involved with that?
We probably would have to check with Los on availability, and then we would reach out to the two boards and the Board of Commissioners as well, and try and get it scheduled. We could do it on a tree board meeting night, or we could do it on a park board meeting night, whichever works best, but try and get all those together and set a date with Los, and they would come and kind of have a presentation and run it, because they're more familiar with trying to get the most efficiency out of a discussion like that.
Why don't we see if we can get them available for the first meeting in September?
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I skipped around. I seconded Debbie's motion. Are there any discussion on that? Take a vote. Aye.
Aye.
And the other is an administrative. I think we're going to check on scheduling and then,
And that's where the big thing is staff getting involved. And so independent of the park board and their vision, and then the Board of Commissioners, what they say on it. But I'll get with staff to try and reach out to Los to push for them coming to the first September meeting.
And then we can just notify everybody. Okay.
next item on the agenda, 5.5, a Tree City update. You know, back January or February, we talked about moving forward with applying for a Tree City application and recognition from the ArborDay.org folks. And it's an online process. I had to collect a bit of data for the first, I guess, few weeks, a couple of months back and forth, filling out their online application. And every time I'd get into filling out one section, there'd be a new section with a little more detail. But I've got all the detail to fill that out. But when I went in to complete that application, they now have a notice on their website that they're currently down for scheduled maintenance and upgrades to provide us with a better experience. Apologize for the inconvenience. They say the improved portal will be fully functional and accepting 2017 applications starting September 1st. So I expect shortly thereafter I'll put the last piece in there and hit the submit button, and maybe we'll be first in line. Any discussion on that? Questions?
So that'll be on the September agenda.
Yes, yeah. Make note to add it on the September agenda
That's what I'm
for an
here
update,
That's what I'm
because there
here
won't be
for.
one before. We're now to Section 6, new business. Again, this is something that I brought forward from an older agenda at 6.1 subway project drawings. Brandon also had sent me an update who believed that those plans had been completed and approved, working with Mike Berkeley. Is that accurate?
There was one tree on the landscape plan that was not on the approved species list. Mr. Berkeley saw their revised submittal and said it was good to go. And we actually had that in time for our planning commission meeting. That was part of our notes for the planning commission.
Did that information come to the tree commission at all?
No, because we did not have quorum. It was on the agenda to be discussed, but it wasn't, we did not have quorum that night.
could we at least make a recommendation that when that kind of stuff happens, the planning commission somehow lets the tree commission know that it's been approved?
Certainly.
So we have a list of what's going up the ladder.
Slaughter will be happy to let you know. She'll be your liaison.
I will be happy to liaise.
And a lot of things lately on the planning commission have been contingent on Mr. Berkeley finalizing. And so if there's any adjustments or recommendations that haven't been met, Mr. Berkeley finalizing is on that. So he'll probably have a good idea of where things sit as well.
And I would think that Mr. Berkeley or that someone in the city would send an email out to the tree commission, to at least the tree commission secretary, and let them know what's been approved.
I think that's wishful thinking.
Okay, I think that may need to be put in the flow of information back and forth.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on that? So that will not show up on our next agenda unless something new develops. Next, under new business 6.2, medical facility development. I added this on there just as an information, I guess, for myself mainly, and for us to talk about. But I know we've noticed the new construction that's going on, and my understanding it's a medical facility of some sort, and I've seen a lot of earth movement and stuff going on down there. So my question in general was, does anybody know if any of that work required any tree board attention or not?
No, it all went through. It's just been a long project in the process. So the tree board saw that, approved the plans. They submitted a revised plans. They paid into the tree bank fund. And then they have a new planting schedule that Mr. Berkeley has reviewed.
And when that $24,000 or something to that,
It was a large amount just because a lot of trees came down.
So that can be removed from here and no longer needs to
Yeah, I think
appear
so.
again.
I think that'd be fair. As long as, like, we've had discussions of follow-up to ensure, so Mr. Berkeley hopefully will, as part of their final inspections, go in and review and ensure that it meets that plan that we saw. And so maybe near the end, we try and set a reminder or something to help keep that going.
Okay.
That would be part of the, especially codes, to do the follow-up to make sure that things are staying alive and as permitted and approved.
Yeah, it seems really simple, but somehow we make it so hard. And, but absolutely, that would be maybe a great thing to add to the design review is let's lay out our process of how someone obtains a final inspection, who inspects it, who has to sign off on it, and just write the law, and then it has to be done that way. And so
Next item was item 7. It was the staff review meeting update with Mike, and he generally kind of catches us up on everything that's happened in the past month, but he's unable to attend today. So I don't know if there's anything to talk about. We'll just add it and carry that forward to the next meeting.
I'm in the staff review meeting, so I'll just be the guest tonight that just talks, but there wasn't anything active in the staff review meeting. One thing that came across this past week is that the Ace Hardware project has requested several variances, and I'm not sure, I'm trying to figure out if they're gonna go to the Board of Zoning, if they're going to go to the Planning Commission. I haven't heard that yet, but I received an email from the owner of Ace Hardware, and one of his biggest requests was lowering the amount of required trees. So he specified that he had to write a $10,000 check into the tree bank fund. He also was planting, I want to say like 100 or 97 trees and 200 and something shrubs, according to what would be required for replacement landscape plan on our restrictions. And he was saying it was going to be in excess of over $100,000 and that it was going to block his building. But just to kind of put a bug in your ear, I'm going to try and ensure that I'm not sure what channel it's being pushed through right now with staff, but I'm trying to like, we don't want to come and talk about trees. We need to go back to where it got approved for trees. And so Mr. Berkeley getting involved in stuff like that we don't want the Planning Commission or in my opinion, or the Board of Zoning Appeals to be the one that decides if 100 trees can be adjusted. We want the people who enforce the trees. Bring that to you guys from a recent note.
So is he back on the agenda for the tree commission?
I don't know what agenda he's on. He sent to me and said that he was requested by staff to send it to me. So I sent staff asking him what meeting they intend on presenting this, and I haven't heard back yet.
I think you have the right to say, we're bouncing that back to the tree commission.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to figure out is what is their plan, because we need to review it. If he wants to adjust, he needs to submit a new plan, and then that way it can be reviewed and say, all right, here's the compare and contrast, and here's what we believe is right or wrong, so.
And he hasn't done that yet. You just
Right, just
feel
a
it's
request.
probably
Yeah,
coming, so
please.
it's a heads up. And then once he finds the channel he's going to use, then, yeah.
Correct.
Item number 8, just an update on tree bank funds.
You may do that again.
I'm good with what you had. You might just
Thank you.
give us that $1 amount. Was it 102,000 balance? 101.
101,000. $101,030.79. I'm sorry, I forgot how to read numbers.
Item number 9 is citizens' comments.
Well, I think the Friends of Bowie to come to the meeting and with the park board and the tree commission to talk about what their vision might be for Triangle School, for that triangle. But, because I think now that all the parks are just gonna be part of the Bowie Park system. So if you're a Friends of Bowie, that means you're friends of all the parks. So it's gonna be one big park system instead of just the Bowie Park and then Triangle and then the Veterans Park. It'll be, if that makes sense.
The last item on today's agenda, it's the adjournment, but we've also got a comment in there that the next regularly scheduled tree commission meeting date is September 5th of 2017.
Is that the day after Labor Day?
Concerns with that? That's okay. All right. And so now we're ready for somebody to make a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
meeting's adjourned.